here today. We are continuing our weekly press conferences, holiday or not, and we are here to talk, as usual, about a couple things. We're going to do an update on gun violence in the city, and we are also going to address, as we do every week, a specific unit within the DA's office or a specific project and what they are doing and what they have achieved. Most specifically this week, we're going to talk about the DA office diversion unit. This is adult diversion, and it is a very important topic which in many ways relates to issues of gun violence. Let me start out by thanking our community stakeholders and staff for being here. We have with us today Principal Dr. Tony Damon of Dobbins High School. Toby Downing is on her way. She's the Executive Director of North Central Victim Services. Anthony Powell has joined us on behalf of Asada Thomas, who is the Director of the Institute for Community Justice, and Mr. Powell is here for the ICJ. We have Michael Cawley Butler with Man Up SCI Phoenix, Roddy Hammond with Man Up SCI Phoenix, and we have the Reverend Dr. Clarence Wright of the Love Zion Baptist Church, where we are right now. In terms of the update on gun violence, we have to date, by the usual measure, there are different measures, but by the usual measure, we have 68 homicides this year to date. Those numbers are obviously unacceptable. They are troubling to all of us. But most importantly, there are real people who are reflected and real names that you're not hearing that are behind those numbers. And those names of those victims are not the only ones affected. We know the truth is that every member of that family is affected, that everyone in that block is affected, and in one way or another, almost everyone in the city is affected when we have this sort of situation. Yesterday, I met with two mothers who were co-victims of gun violence in Southwest Philadelphia, who shared their pain and frustration. It was a different press event, and it was organized by a lot of people in the community who've been getting together to look for solutions. Some of those solutions are very important. One of them was that the city should work with public and private partners to put $100 million into programs and community-based organizations that are addressing prevention. Another point that they raised is the issues that we are having with obtaining bail that can detain people in that small number of truly serious gun violence cases. I'll address what the bails are shortly. My office will continue to forge partnerships with community organizations, government institutions, all kinds of people of goodwill, so that we can work together to make a change in this regard. As we look to some other details about gun violence this week, during the period February 7th through February the 13th, 2021, you see there were 9 homicides and 16 non-fatal shootings in Philadelphia, 120 cases opened involving either possession of guns or gun violence. The median bail set for illegal possession of guns was $100,000. And as you know, it's not really $100,000, it's only 10% of that, and if you get a bail bondsman, it's a third of that. So the median bail was actually only about $3,333 if you hire a bail bondsman. The median bail for violent offenses committed with a gun, or at least involving a gun, was only $150,000. So once again, that translates to $5 grand when it comes to the ability of someone to get out of custody. We have seen tremendous improvement in not holding poor people on non-serious offenses, which is right. It's what we should do. But we have to be willing, when people present a true and serious danger to the community, we have to be willing to have bails that are going to change that. Cash bail has failed, it has utterly failed, and we need to go to a system of no cash bail where you are either released or you are held. And the question is danger. It is not your own economics. All right. So we will be available to answer questions, of course, about these gun violence issues and any other issues at the conclusion of the press conference. But I want to move forward to introduce Assistant District Attorney Mike Lee, who supervises the diversion unit staff policies and programs, and will be explaining the importance of this tremendous expansion that we have seen with diversion in the DA's office among adults. Mr. Lee is the director of the diversion unit, but I parachuted him in to do that work when he was already the Director of Legislative and Government Affairs for the DA's office. And I did it because I thought he was the guy who could get it done, along with Carly Friedman, who did a whole lot of work with him at the time, and has now moved on to other very important work outside of the office. In a prior life, Mr. Lee was the co-founder and former executive director of Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, an organization he founded out of law school with Ryan Hancock, another well-known attorney in the city. And part of their legacy has been the Clean Slate Act. It is one of the most impressive, cutting-edge pieces of criminal justice litigation in the United States. It happened in Pennsylvania, which is something of a miracle, because Pennsylvania tends to be on the back end of that train, trying to go back in time, as opposed to being on the front end of that train, making progress moving forward. But that is only one of his achievements. I got to know him first when he was involved with the Occupy defendants, meaning people who were protesting during Occupy and they got arrested. He was representing some, I was representing some others, and found him to be a very talented and fascinating young man at that time. He has served on Lieutenant Governor Stack's Community Pardon Advisory Board. He is a proud graduate of the very first class of the law school begun by Drexel University, now known as the Klein School of Law. Mr. Lee, I'd like you to come to the podium and talk about the Diversion Unit staff and successes both before and during the pandemic. And please just give us a short opportunity to clean up the podium here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First off, happy Black History Month. And second, thank you, DA Krasner, for such kind words. And it's been a tremendous opportunity, both personally and professionally, to be able to serve as the supervisor of the Adult Diversion Program, or unit, in the District Attorney's Office. And the Diversion Unit is a real creative space. It's not quite as adversarial as our traditional criminal justice system, yet, like our society, it still reflects many of the same issues that we're dealing with. In fact, we address them much more directly than you would find in a traditional courtroom. We acknowledge the fact that there are social determinants that go into people's decision making. In other words, you're not a bad person just because you're arrested. You're not a bad person just because you engage in criminal activity. In fact, we believe that with the right interventions, most people can lead a law-abiding, stabilized, productive life. And that's very important because we see what happens when people don't. When people don't have hope that they can change the conditions around themselves, make the necessary self-improvements that they want to make, that they have agency over, to move forward in life. So when I came into the Diversion Unit, the first thing that I noticed was an absence of community. There wasn't much community voice, although there were many promising things in the Diversion Unit and the landscape in Philadelphia. Diversion programs really attempt to minimize the impact of the legal criminal system by connecting people to services and resources to address these underlying conditions and social behaviors that I talked about earlier. The most common type of diversion program is called a problem-solving model. In that, you'll find the same traditional stakeholders that you find in a regular courtroom: a judge, a prosecutor, a defendant, and sometimes a victim. But what this model does is work collaboratively to connect people to resources, to monitor their progress during this connection of services, and to hopefully determine if someone has been successful and their case can be closed. Where it starts to get a little tricky is that not every diversion program has the same eligibility criteria, not every program has the same conditions, and not every program has the same outcomes. Some diversion programs can result in a conviction. a plea of guilty can be a condition to enter into the program. And the diversion we're talking about is away from incarceration and into resources and community services, hopefully. Other types of diversions, when you think of the word diversion, generally involve the absence of a conviction, and someone can have their record expunged as if the arrest never occurred. However, working with the MacArthur Racial and Ethnic Disparities Working Group, we uncovered that, not to our surprise, racism exists in our diversion unit, both in our staff and our outcomes, as well as in the programs that we staff and partner with. But thankfully, with the help of this working group, we've been very proactive in addressing all of these biases that we can find and looking to find more, both by training our staff on the importance of understanding differences, our own biases, and most importantly, social determinants that go into the types of risks people take. Additionally, we transitioned away from the historic way we would consider cases. One ADA would look at a file, maybe check a criminal history to see if someone was eligible, and yes or no vote. One person. Now, we do group case reviews where we try to explore much more about the humanity of the person accused, the victim, if there's one. We try to look at the humanity and context for them, and really try to find the best fit to give someone the best chance to be successful in the diversion program. We're also in the process of developing a universal diversion application so that anyone who isn't diverted at the time of charging by our office through our charging unit, defense counsel can fill out an application and tell us more about this individual besides the facts of the case. We want to know if there was early childhood trauma. We want to know if they were recently the victim of a crime, whether it was reported or not, whether an arrest was made or not, and whether there was a conviction obtained or not. We need to know how far someone went in school, if they're a parent, so that we can be more informed and try to put people in positions to succeed. But that led us to the next problem, one that I'm very excited to announce that I think we have the beginnings of a solution for. We want to make sure that as we expand diversion programs and learn more about the people going through them, we're more thoughtful and reflective of where people go. Most importantly, we want community values to be at the forefront of this expansion and innovation. We want community organizations that are far too often overlooked, like the one that I started when we began. We want them to be at the front of our solution-making table. So we are forming an Anti-Discrimination Advisory Board, ADAB. Sounds kind of cool. We're hoping that through the Anti-Discrimination Advisory Board, we will minimize the chances that we do so, we expand and replicate existing social problems. We want to be anti-racist, we want to be anti-sexist, and we want to be anti-classist. And we don't believe any of those factors should contribute to whether or not someone is able to move past an arrest, whether someone is able to stabilize their life and secure housing and lift up their family, or whether or not someone has to go through traditional trial system and be further involved in our criminal legal system. This board will be about 9 people, but I'm very excited that the first 3 people are here. Well, 2 of them are here today, and I think the combination of perspective will really show the direction we're trying to go with this board. We will be seeking out diverse candidates. We want a board that reflects the people of Philadelphia in geography, in orientation, in attitude, and in values. And the board as it stands right now, I think reflects that. Unfortunately, our first board member, Tony Willis from Ardila's house, is not able to join us today, but she runs a reentry organization exclusively focused on women. And it was started because not enough reentry programs address the unique circumstances that women face when they're reentering. their role in their family, their role as a provider, their role as a mother or daughter. I wish Tony was here to tell you more about what she does, but I'm very excited to have Tony as part of this initial board composition. Next, on behalf of Man Up SCI Phoenix is Michael Butler, who will be talking very briefly about the Man Up SCI Phoenix organization and what we hope they can bring with their perspective and values to helping people who are being diverted stay diverted. And last, very thankfully, Institute for Community Justice, which is a much larger organization than the other two that I mentioned. Unfortunately, Asada Thomas is not here, but Anthony Powell is to speak about ICJ and some of the work they provide, and also give perspective of what it's like to be a middle-sized organization and how the conflict of looking for resources impacts their ability to serve people. So I'd like to ask Mike Butler to come up very briefly, followed by Anthony Powell.
Good afternoon. My name is Raji Hammett, and I have Michael Butler next to me, and we are from the Institute for Community Justice, representing the Man Up Association. I am the community liaison for the Man Up Association, and basically the Man Up Association is based out of SCI Phoenix. And at SCI Phoenix, you have a group of men, a group of individuals who come together, who we consider ourselves credible messengers. And when we say credible messengers, we consider ourselves that gap between that young man or that young woman who may need to be able to talk to someone who looks like them, who walks like them, who talks like them, to be able to get some steam off of them so that they can be able to be better off in this community. We have an organization that basically can decrease the gun violence, that can speak to the gun violence. Right now, with over 60 homicides and murders in the city, it's up 33% around that number. Also, we have the law, but when you have law, you have to have order. We consider ourselves to be incredible messengers that can restore the order in our community. We believe that order comes from resources. We believe that the order comes from having a place that a person can come to, that they can relate to, and individuals who look like them. We also know that being credible messengers, we have an experience that a lot of people who have been in the forefront of representing their communities don't have. We were formerly incarcerated, which a lot of men, a lot of women are going through their process, that stage. So who can they talk to? Who can they turn to? That's where we will come in at. Agents of change. We feel that we are the leaders of the community. Not saying that we're trying to reinvent the wheel, but let's enhance the wheel. We are the new millennium of change. That the young men whose father who may be incarcerated, or a young woman whose mother may be incarcerated, they want to hear from someone who has walked the walk and talked the talk, and who can speak the language that they speak. That's what this community is missing, and I would like to introduce Michael Butler, who can speak to this as well.
My name is Michael Butler, and I work for the Institute for Community Justice as the Workforce Development Industry Relations Coordinator. And I started my journey at SCI Phoenix when I entered into Man Up, and I am a product of Man Up. I've been incarcerated for 17 years, and I didn't have an idea of what I was going to do when I came out. And Man Up, with those mentors that I had up there, they put my life on a correct path. So what my job is now is to basically find educational and certification programs for the men, for the women who have been impacted by mass incarceration, because I believe that with education, you can change your life. And that is my part, and that will be my part in this diversion program, to basically find those tools and those avenues so that person doesn't have to go through what I went through. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of my director, Asada Thomas, who couldn't be with us today, and our CEO, James Scholl, who is the president of our mother agency, Philadelphia Fight, we bring you greetings. My name is Anthony Powell, and I am the manager of Reentry Services and Outreach Services with the Institute for Community Justice. We are a prison and reentry support services that provides opportunities for individuals, returning citizens when they return home. Our primary focus is kind of three-tier. One, because of the work that we do around health services, making sure that folks have the ability to be linked to health services when they come home. As Michael talked about, one of our premier areas is workforce development, because that is an area that is uniquely needed when folks come home. And then we work very close with our criminal justice partners, such as the DA office and probation and parole, and many of the halfway houses, to provide mandated services for individuals who come home. We focus on providing that opportunity behind the walls prior to coming home, and then when they come home, they get routed into reentry services. So we are devised into 4 different units within ICJ, one of which is prison linkages. That's where you heard Radi, and Radi work directly with individuals behind the walls before they come home in preparation to prepare them for the necessary services that they need. We also provide advocacy around prison support behind the walls, county, state, and federal prison. We do a lot of traveling across the state, along with working very close with State Road, our local prison, where we actually have folks housed at State Road 5 days a week, working with individuals in preparation for their reentry. Then we have the Reentry Services Unit, which I oversee, and Outreach Services, where once they come in or get routed into our services, we then do an assessment and provide that opportunity to be able to navigate them to the necessary services that are needed. We've been in existence, ICJ, for about 17 years, and more frequently, really been engaged in the work behind the walls. So we're happy to have Michael Butler and Roddy, who are 2 products of individuals that came to us either as clients and or part-time individuals coming home, and both have been able to come on board as full-time employees with our agency. So just wanted to let you know that we extremely do look at opportunities for individuals who come home to give them that second chance. So we invite you to definitely take advantage of our services. We are glad to be a part of this Diversion partnership and look forward to a long and fruitful relationship. So we thank you for inviting us and being part of today's festivities. Thank you.
Thank you. So, if you believe that the criminal justice system is broken, and you may have some resources that can help fix it, please reach out to us. We want to hear what services are available where, how much dignity you treat people with, and how we can work together to improve outcomes in our adult diversion unit, in the decision-making of our adult diversion unit staff. Feel free to email me, mike.lee@phila.gov, or you can call me at 215-686-8712. I would now like to invite up in the following order our last 3 remaining speakers for additional remarks. First will be Principal Dr. Tony Damon, followed by Tony Downing, Executive Director of Northwest Central Victim Services, and lastly, Reverend Clarence Wright, our host today from Love Zion Baptist Church. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As he said, I'm Dr. Damon, the proud principal at Morrell Dobbins CTE High School, right here in the North Philadelphia community. President Barack Obama said, We need to keep making our streets safer and our criminal justice systems fair, our homeland more secure, and our world more peaceful and sustainable for the next generation. I stand here in firm support and excited about the creative collaboration and initiatives here for our young people, for the people of this community, and in support and looking out for our next generation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Clarence Wright, pastor here at the Love Zion Baptist Church. My job is simple. We're serving as the host for this event, and we are proud to be the host for this event. Not only this event, but also just to partner with this district attorney. There's been much talk about the violent crime and the gun rate in our community. You are quite literally on the front line here today. It's an appropriate choice to come and host press conferences like this in the heart of the community. A couple years ago, 9 people were shot on this block. There's still a bullet hole in the window of my office, which is right to my right. A couple years ago, a 16-year-old girl got off a bus around the corner and lost her life. You're quite literally on the front line. I'm of the view that it is organizations like this church, like Dobbins School, like all of these various programs that have been featured today that make a difference in reducing crime. Law enforcement, which the district attorney is a part of, prosecutes crime and takes appropriate measures. But it's organizations like churches, schools, and nonprofits that are on the front lines trying to prevent crime, trying to prevent and lower the gun violence. And I think we've seen in a pandemic year, when we did not have the programs that many of us offer, when we did not have the after-school programs, when the rec centers were closed, when all of the various efforts that we use to reduce crime in our communities were not in place, we see what happened with the murder rate in our city. So the fact that we have a district attorney who is partnering with these community organizations to not just prosecute crime, but also to partner with those who are on the front lines to prevent it, it really speaks volumes. So we welcome you today, and we thank you for your continued efforts.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wright, for hosting us. I only wish I had your speaking voice and your height. Maybe in my next life, but thank you so much. And thank you all so much for your comments. All of it very insightful and very important. We are here to answer any questions. I understand we may have some questions in the room, but we may also have some questions by email. Are there any questions at this time? While you're all carefully thinking about your questions, let me just say that, the community has spoken, and they spoke yesterday. They are speaking in a different way today. And what I hear them saying over and over is that there needs to be a united front in the city of people and the people they elected, and that united front needs to find the resources that a poor city doesn't always have to address the issue of gun violence in ways that are fundamental. Dr. Wright was right when he said that what you are seeing with this spike in gun violence is exactly what happens when a pandemic strips away all of these important protective programs that we have that have been reducing violence in their own way for years. Now, why am I saying that? Because the swimming pools were closed this year, because the rec centers are closed now, and they were closed all summer, because there are not even classrooms at certain times where students have to go in order to learn, because all of the job programs that were out there, the kind of program I attended when I was a kid, all the jobs, never mind programs, all of the jobs in our economy, the summer camps, the arts programs. What about something as simple as organized athletics? What about something as simple as Little League football? My son used to play on the Wissahickon Braves, played 1 year on the Wissahickon Braves, which has, by the way, produced an NFL player or two. And the excitement that those young people have on all the different teams when they come together to play all over the city, all fall, when they are practicing, that excitement is such an important part of the texture of young people's lives. It's gone. And what has replaced it? Well, unfortunately, and there's more than one reason for this, but unfortunately what we see is a sharp uptick, not just in Philadelphia, all over the United States, in gun violence during this pandemic. And there's a couple lessons we can take from that. Lesson one is that since it is all over the country, and so is the pandemic, they are connected. Lesson two, why weren't we putting more into these programs? Why was it we were stripping these programs? Why were we taking people in our public schools out who taught art, who did after-school programs? Why was that all being taken away when we now can see as clearly as possible how protective that was? When we come out of this pandemic, if we are anything, we should be doubling down on those programs. We should be building more of those programs. Law enforcement has its place, and we are part of that place. And the fact is that our rate of conviction for violent crimes committed with guns in the first quarter of 2020, right before the pandemic hit and shut down courts, which is essentially where they are, was 85%. It was the highest rate of conviction, or among the highest, in at least 5 years. That's a really high rate of conviction. But that's not the answer. You're just talking about a very small group of people who get caught, and then what happens to them in court. And there's nothing about that that is stopping the next blood from being on the sidewalk. We have to think in terms of prevention. And so I want to put a challenge out to the community. I want to put it out to businessmen, to corporate leaders. I want to put it out to our great academic institutions who have great big foundations that they have accumulated thanks to their nonprofit status in Philadelphia. I want to put it out to government, and that is that we can come together. We can find that $100 million that are necessary to invest in community-based organizations to reduce homicides, to reduce shootings now and in the future. Chicago did it, and they did it very successfully before the pandemic hit. They saw a 30% decline on certain metrics of their gun violence when they got together $70 billion and they invested it in the community-based organizations that get it done. Los Angeles did it. They've done it for more than a decade with something they call the GRID program, G-R-Y-D. You have to invest in the community-based organizations. You have to invest in non-law enforcement-led programs that build hope, that build futures, that make people believe in the future. And that is how you take the finger off the trigger of the gun. That's what we have to do. So let me say it again. I am calling on business leaders. I am calling on our academic institutions. I am calling on my fellow government leaders, and I am calling on everyone in the community to come forward, to hold hands, to get it done, and come up with that $100 million that we need to get something serious started in this city so that we can be the land of freedom instead of being where we are right now. Are there any final questions? There are not.